Good afternoon and welcome to the 2019 Division III Women's Basketball Selection Show. I'm your host, Will Haskett. The pursuit of a national championship is down to just 64 teams. But who are those teams? We find out right now. 43 teams already know their postseason fate as conference champions. And that leaves 21 coveted at-large berths to fill out the rest of the field. First and second round games begin this coming weekend. And once we're down to 4, it's on to Salem, Virginia for the national semifinals and championship coming up on March the 15th and the 16th. We have a lot of voices to help us break down the entire bracket today, including the Division III Women's Basketball Committee Chair Karen Harvey coming up a bit later. And also we're pleased to have back Dave McHugh from D3Hoops.com with us as well. Dave, you've rested up since the men's show. Let's break down another bracket, shall we?
Well, if you consider that rest, fine, but I'm definitely ready to go.
All right, the women's game has had such top-heavy success the last few seasons, but I think it takes away from the fact that the sport itself is getting deeper and deeper throughout the ranks. So what are you looking forward to in this bracket?
Now, you nailed it really well there. The top end has always been a power, and we've gotten a lot of good teams there. And the conversation does sometimes get lost. We're going to see that when we reveal this bracket today. But there's a lot of teams in that second tier who can beat top-tier teams or at least make things interesting. I think this year's bracket's going to be a little bit more wide open than we expect. We may still see some of the most familiar names moving on, but I don't think the opening weekend is going to be less spectacular than many would expect.
And if this past conference championship weekend taught us anything, it's to expect the unexpected, especially when it comes to a championship pursuit. All right, Dave, let's get right into it. Get started with the first 8 to unveil. And the first team to unveil is the only unbeaten team in the land. That would be Thomas More. There have been 5 straight national undefeated championship seasons in a row in the sport, including the last title run for the Saints back in 2016. They're undefeated again this year, entering the tournament, leading the nation in field goal percentage and featuring the offensive exploits this season of Madison Temple. The team is also 7-0 this season against ranked opponents and has a plus 30 scoring margin. St. Vincent returns to the tournament for the first time since 2012 to take on the Saints in round number 1. An impressive season for Trine, winning the MIAA this past weekend and ranking in the top 10 in the country in shooting and scoring margin. And it's party time now for Emory, making its 4th tournament appearance after a strong season in the UAA garners an at-large selection. Transylvania won the Heartland to earn hosting duties and return to the tournament for the first time since 2015, while Piedmont won the USA South to earn the automatic berth. Chicago adds power to this page. The 3 straight tournaments, or the match, is a program record for the Maroons, who were tested by a tough schedule all season. Oglethorpe breathes easier after a loss in the SAA championship put the Petrels' tournament hopes at risk. All right, Dave, you look at this entire page. It's headlined by the team at the top. Again, 5 straight times a team has gone undefeated to win a national championship in Division III women's basketball. There's only 1 team left in the country that could do it this year, and then the first team out of my mouth here today.
Yeah, Thomas More is the barnstorming team of 2018-19. They played all over the country this season and visited multiple states from Washington State to Kentucky just in a 1-week span at one point. They played, I think, 22 of their games by the first weekend of January, and then they had to wait. Last year in the division, they're the only undefeated team remaining. They'll most likely be the #1 team in the country when the top 25s come out later today. And as you said, watch out for Madison Temple. She is a darn good player that helps Thomas More click, but they have other weapons like they have in the past. Thomas More, I think, is a favorite here. And sorry, Bearcats, somebody's got to play Thomas More in the first round. It is the Bearcats, though. This is a matchup of former conference foes. Thomas More now no longer in the PAC as they head out of Division III. St. Vincent winning the PAC. It's either ironic or poetic that this game is taking place, depending on who you talk to. Trine, coaching change in the preseason, rather tumultuous. Kind of surprised a lot of people, but they ended up still playing very strong, have one of the prettier arenas in Division III, which is relatively new. Ended up winning the MIAA. They've got a great matchup here with Emory in a game that I don't think you normally see all the time. But I will say this is a tough pod as Trine's in there with Thomas More. I think a lot of people are going to look at that with a raised eyebrow. Emory, in the meantime, is an at-large selection. Maybe a team no one's talking enough about. Finished tied for 2nd in the UAA. Only one of the NCAA with not a conference tournament, we should point out, in all divisions. Well done under the alum Misha Jackson there. I think Emory's a team people aren't expecting to be a force, but they may match up really well with Trine. Transylvania, 2 losses. They happened in the first 7 games of the season. Undefeated since, especially at home at the Beck Center. By the way, Kentucky Wildcats men's team on the road this weekend. Women don't play until Sunday, so Lexington, Kentucky, the place to be is the Beck Center. Go with the Pioneers, who have a bat for a logo. They'll take on Piedmont, winners of the USA South. Jamie Purdy's squad hasn't lost since December 1. Their last tournament-type team was a loss to Oglethorpe, who's on the other side of this pod. There's a good challenge here for the Lions against Transylvania. Chicago, a lot of high expectations coming into the season. I think they were a top 5 preseason pick. They have struggled per se, I think because the UAA ended up being a bit more of a tougher conference than many expected. Chicago's a good team, but now's the time to prove that. They will take on Oglethorpe. Luckily not at Oglethorpe. That's a black floor. If anyone's never seen it before, the Stormy Petrels have gone and tested themselves this season. They have that helped them get this at-large bid, we should say. Now they have a chance to prove their mettle against Chicago and fight out of the weekend. This is a good pod here of teams that need to test themselves.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and that's just the first 8 teams that we've been able to unveil. Let's transition to the next 8 if we can, and a new section to unveil where Texas Dallas has made the tournament for the 3rd straight year. Balanced unit led by Victoria Pena, who is tops on the team in assists, steals, and 3-pointers made. Texas Lutheran stays in state after winning the SCAC as we continue on through. More Longhorn State love with Marin Baylor making its tournament debut and would love to exercise some revenge on Texas Dallas in the 2nd round, which just beat the Crew in the ASC Championship, while Rhodes knows a little something about that, edging Oglethorpe in the SAA final. Next pod on this page, another run begins for Wash U. The 5-time national champs haven't missed the field in 30 years and enter off an impressive regular season win over Chicago on Saturday. Becca Clark-Callender runs the point for Wash U team that is top 10 in the nation in assist to turnover margin. A battle of power D3 athletic programs with Wisconsin Whitewater driving south. The 18th appearance for the Warhawks mean there are nearly 50 tournament appearances between both of these programs in this first-round matchup. And we aren't done with powerhouses yet either, as George Fox is here as well. The 2009 national champs have played for a title 3 times in the last decade. Greenville stays in town for the first-round matchup, fresh off a SLIAC championship. There's a lot to unpack there, Dave. Not just the battle for the state of Texas on top, but that other pod with some of the biggest D3 names in the sport down there as well. A lot to unpack.
Yeah, good way of saying it. Yeah, the Texas pod. You might be looking at this if you're a Texas team and seeing Rhodes here, maybe you're alert. But, hey, maybe you're traveling somewhere else. Rhodes can get to this group. That makes it convenient. Texas-Dallas, we're unsure how this equation was going to work out. Obviously, we have the answer. They're hosting partly because they beat Marin Baylor in the conference championship game. Fortunately, the committee can't break up this Texas group, so they have them playing the Bulldogs. But Poly Thomason has a good team who has to play a familiar foe possibly in the 2nd round, but they are a team you should be watching out for. Texas Lutheran upset the top-ranked Trinity Tigers in the conference to get to the NCAA tournament. Top-ranked in the conference, I want to point out. Being on the home floor probably helped. They started hitting threes like you wouldn't believe in the championship. Of all the Texas teams TLU played this season, interestingly, they did not play UT Dallas this season. Marin Baylor, one of the top teams in the region, gets the at-large. That's not a surprise, just 3 losses. One was to Thomas More, one to Hardin-Simmons, the other to Texas Dallas, who they may see in the 2nd round. This, of course, is the home of the D3 football champs, and the Crew women team would like to make a statement similar to that, though they're going to have to get out of Texas first. And Rhodes, they can drive to Texas. That's why the committee put them here and helps them a lot with flights and budgets. The Lynx actually had Oglethorpe's number earlier this season, beat them 2 out of 3 times, including in the conference title, which is why Rhodes is in this tournament. Watch U, a surprise maybe as a host to people. I don't think a lot thought that they would be a host. Tremendous season, 30th straight NCAA tournament berth, I believe, for what is basically the program that has set the bar in Division III. Won the UAA title and showed that they are a better team than I think many expected. Again, many had their eyes on Chicago in the UAA. Whitewater, fascinating team when you look at the at-large selections. This tells you the National Committee is not all about just win-loss percentages. They gave Whitewater the nod due to a very strong SOS and very strong results versus regionally ranked opponents criteria. They have some good results, but they're licking their wounds. They came off a loss to Oshkosh in the title game that wasn't close. But this is a fascinating X's and O's game, in my opinion. George Fox, committee had to create a heck of a pod to fly them somewhere. George Fox isn't unfamiliar with traveling. They may be actually the team to watch here. They've been flying a little bit under the radar. It'll be a good test for them to see what they really are. Greenville, maybe the odd team out here. And obviously the shortest trip travel Greenville's going to have a real test in George Fox just to get out of the first day.
All right, a quarter away through the bracket and halfway done with the left-hand side. We slide down to the bottom half of the left and unveil a host at the top line. It's Scranton for the 4th straight year. The Royals are landmark conference champions, make the tournament for the 32nd time. That's more than any other program. Also won it all back in 1985. New England College earned the NECC automatic berth, first-round opponent for Scranton. Johns Hopkins flies back into the tournament for the first time since 2012 to meet Little East champ Eastern Connecticut State. An intriguing first-round matchup awaits our next host. That would be Gettysburg, making back-to-back tournaments for the first time since the 1980s, with Emma Dorshemer leading the team in scoring and ranking 4th in three-point percentage nationally. Christopher Newport has made the national semifinals twice in program history and arrive again this year as champs of the CAC. A wait ends for an at-large hopeful. Hello, Mount St. Mary, which is in after an offensive struggle in the Skyline Conference Championship, snapped a 14-game winning streak. But the Knights try and start a new streak with new life against Westfield State, tournament participants for the 4th straight year. Dave, anybody's guess really who emerges out of these two pods combining for the 8 you see on this thing. You got some heavy-hitting teams in terms of their national success and some teams that maybe didn't know if they were going to be in the tournament at all.
In this one, Scranton hosting a very good team, especially if their best player on the team, and Bridget Mann, is playing. She's been banged up a bit this season. If she's in, watch out. Scranton is a team you need to keep an eye on. New England College, a lot of what-ifs. They haven't been in the tournament in a very long time. Congratulations. A tough matchup for them against Scranton, but when you tip up the ball, anything's possible. That said, Scranton is one of the great places in Division III women's basketball to catch a game. Sometimes teams feel like they're already down 5 points by just walking into the building. Johns Hopkins, welcome to the tournament. Catherine Bixby went and tested her squad. This is a team that really doesn't have a lot of experience in postseason play or really battling at the top of the conference. She's admitted that. This is a good chance for them to kind of shake that off against Eastern Connecticut. However, do not look past Eastern Connecticut. They're the team that knocked off Amherst, ending a 68-game winning streak for the Mammoths earlier this season, then backed it up by getting this conference AQ. Hopkins cannot look over Eastern Connecticut. Nobody can here, because if there's one team that can make a surprising run, it's Eastern Connecticut. Gettysburg, Bullets didn't win the AQ. They're a little bit banged up. You mentioned Dorshemer. She seems a little bit banged up. They're a team that seems like they have depth. They want to go up tempo, but they also have size. I don't think they figured it out quite yet. They have to figure it out quick. There's Christopher Newport in a battle of two Mid-Atlantic teams, which is a little bit tough here. This is a team that actually lost a lot from last year. Many of us expected them to have to retool this year. They have played well, especially when needed. They aren't the juggernaut they have been the last few years, but considering how they've retooled, you cannot count them out. And again, a matchup with Gettysburg, that one's a tough one in the first night of the tournament. Surprise, surprise, Mount St. Mary's in. This is going to have a lot of those who have bubble hopes maybe get a little bit nervous. We didn't think Mount St. Mary's would get in just because we thought the regional rankings would shake out differently. They may have been one of the last teams selected. We really don't know. They're going up against Westfield State, who is basically a system team. They will go about 15 deep in a game. They will pressure you on defense, try and get turnovers. They will go up-tempo on offense. They want to shoot and shoot often. So they've been off the radar a little bit more than they have been in the past. Mount St. Mary's is in for a battle with Westfield State, depending on how Westfield State's playing there. And again, Gettysburg, Christopher Newport on the other side. That's going to be the game that kind of overshadows everything.
All right, final eight, I should say, on this half of the bracket. It's headlined by the MAC Commonwealth champ at Messiah. The two-time national runner-ups are led by double-double machine Alicia Rohrer, who averages 15 and 13 this season. Hilbert will tackle the challenge on the inside, capturing the Allegheny Mountain Collegiate Conference for the second straight year. RIT is back for a third straight season to battle Baldwin Wallace, which gets an at-large berth to return to the tournament for the first time since 2015. Haverford captured the Centennial Conference crown to do battle with newcomer Rosemont, who makes its debut after a Colonial States title. Tufts is the annual threat, coming one win shy in both 2016 and 17, but there is always a regional hurdle to success. The NESCAC champs this season handing Bowdoin its first loss of the season, the title game this past weekend. Perhaps that is the bit of confidence for Carla Berube team to get that first national title run. Western New England is the opponent, winners of the Commonwealth Coast Conference. And Dave, as you take a look at this final two pods, final eight, as we get to this first half of the bracket to be done, How much did Tufts win over the weekend really disrupt maybe the outlook going into it, or was it just one game?
You know what? I think at first we thought that's what it would be, that Tufts winning would possibly remove some hosting opportunities or change things around. I think in the end, it actually bolstered Tufts' position, allowed them to host, which we expected. But really, if you look at the bracket, put them in a very strong position bracket-wise. That helped Tufts, but I don't think it really shook up too much overall. The top 3 teams in the NESCAC were expected to get in. In fact, we picked Bowdoin and Amherst as basically the first 2 off the board. They're going to take on a Western New England team here that is a bit of an unknown. It's a beast of a region. Western New England having to take on Tufts is unfortunate, but again, back to Thomas More conversation, somebody's got to do it. Going up in reverse order, Haverford, the former chair of the Women's Basketball Committee, gets her team in by beating Gettysburg in the conference championship. She got to enjoy this weekend. They'll take on Rosemont. First time dancing the NCAA tournament in program history. They realized that the new look CSAC would probably, a number of the good teams left for the new AEC. Coach Reaver telling me that, they felt that a lot of people would think, oh, they're not much of a team because they won the CSAC. They went out and tried to prove otherwise. They dominated that conference. If they want to prove they're better than what many skeptics think, beating Haverford will be a way to do that. If you look at Baldwin Wallace and RIT, this is 2 teams that have a lot of question marks. RIT had a 5-game losing streak at the turn of the new year that I think had a lot of people fall off their radar. RIT is a good team, but that 5-game losing streak, I think, caused a lot of concerns about who exactly RIT could be at the end of the season. Then losing to Ithaca in the conference championship by 2, I think, concerns people. But you're looking at one of the better players on the team. They are a balanced squad. They could be good. Baldwin Wallace, same deal with them. 3 losses at the beginning of the year to Marietta, Otterbein, and Ohio Northern. Then 3 games later, losing to Marietta. Then losing to Ohio Northern again in the conference championship. I think it's just a bunch of what unknowns there. And then finally, Messiah and Hilbert. Messiah, one of the better teams in the country, though I think they've got some question marks they need to prove to people. The MAC Commonwealth wasn't as challenging as it normally has been, and I think some people doubt how good Messiah is. Hilbert got the delayed win in the AMCC. Remember, we talked on the men's show about the game not tipping until 6. Power going out halfway through the game that Hilbert eventually won to get in. Hilbert, congratulations on making it in. Maybe they can prove something against the Falcons of Messiah.
Yeah, some teams have already proved some things. Some teams that still have something to maybe prove themselves in these 8 as we wrap up now halfway through this part of the bracket. All right, halfway through the big reveal. Dave and I step aside for a quick second. We'll dive right back into the bracket after this.
Big shots. Teamwork. This trophy is not given. It must be earned. The 2019 NCAA Division III Women's Basketball Championship, March 15th and 16th at the Krager Center in Salem.
Bounces right back with a triple. Great job here, and that'll do it!
Visit ncaa.com/tickets and get your tickets today.
Welcome back to the 2019 Division III Women's Basketball Selection Show. Dave McHugh and I are going through each matchup, and with half the field unveiled, Dave, let's waste anybody's time the rest of the way. Let's dive right back into the bracket. Let's keep these teams going. Big postseason expectations for the first team to unveil on this right side. That's St. Thomas. The 1991 national champs have one of the best teams in program history, ranking 2nd in the country in shooting and featuring the best 3-point shooting team in the land. Hannah Spalding averages 16 and 9 per game while shooting over 68% from the field. Ripon won the Midwest Conference to return to the field for the first time in a decade. Illinois Wesleyan won it all back in 2012 and is back in the field this year after surviving the test in the CCIW, while Wisconsin Lutheran is another automatic qualifier out of the NACC. At-large selection gobbled up by Vassar, which features the nation's top free throw shooter. Sophie Nick connects at a 97% clip. Not fouling her would be a strategy for another at-large team. As we say hello to SUNY Geneseo, 5 straight tournament berths matches a program best. Lurking on this page is the defending champions from Amherst. The 2-time defending national champs saw the run of perfection in, as Dave alluded to earlier in the show. 68 was the final mark in the winning streak. It came just 3 games into the season. So there's a power transfer in the sport perhaps taking place. Husson is hoping to play the early spoiler in via the NAC. All right, Dave, it's been Amherst, and more Amherst the last couple of years in the sport. It feels like there's a little bit of a balance in power, and this isn't exactly the easiest 8 to escape from, even if you are the Mammoths.
Agreed. I'm going to steal your pun from earlier. They've been the mammoth of the sport for the last several seasons. but they are not the same team of old. We'll get to them in a moment. I want to start with St. Thomas, though, because they, by the bracket and the committee here, are clearly one of the better teams in the country in the committee's mind here. Here's a great matchup of unknown versus known. We know who St. Thomas is. We know how good they are. We know how dominant they've been in the MIAC of late. Ripon, we don't know as much about. Getting in is great from the NECC, but they are in for a tough battle with St. Thomas. But that unknown can provide the opportunity for Ripon to pull off an upset. The problem is they're playing at one of the tougher places to play in women's basketball. Another unknown is Illinois Wesleyan, Wisconsin Lutheran. You look at those records, you go, really? Well, Illinois Wesleyan plays in the CCIW. We know all about Illinois Wesleyan. We know the Titans are a good team. We know that they will challenge themselves and they will find a way to get a victory. They and Wheaton were battling atop the CCIW this year, and that makes them battle-tested. Wisconsin Lutheran, on the other hand, with just one loss in a conference that isn't as challenging. That said, I think Wisconsin Lutheran is better than many expect, and don't be surprised if they can pull the upset here. Vassar on the other side of things in a battle of two upstate New York teams, both at-large teams. Vassar comes in with a great coach who just got this team clicking this year. She's a descendant of Bill Finney, the famed Marymount head coach, and going up against Geneseo, who had a coaching change, a surprising coaching change. Scott Emmer left for a higher division in the offseason. This matchup's fascinating to me because I think these two teams know each other a little bit too well. Then you go down to Amherst and Huston. And while Amherst has not been the team of old, and I'm talking about undefeated national champions, they are still a good team. Now, they are younger, and we've seen that, and they've had to adjust to that. But they've still got arguably the best player in the country. They've got size inside and their experience, and you cannot look past G.P. Gramacki in the way he can prepare a team for games. Huston, much like on the men's side, is going to have to play foil here. They may be able to pull off an upset, but that's a tough game at a very, very unique place to see a game.
Yeah, gold standard of Division III basketball, no doubt, in that unveil. All right, let's slide on down the right-hand side of the bracket. If you were watching the men's show earlier, no surprise to see the team that is next and hosting. That would be Wisconsin Oshkosh, the WIAC winners, generation removed from back-to-back title game appearances. This berth marks 5 in the last 6 years. Pomona Pitzer travels east after earning the SCIAC automatic berth. Two-time national champ DePauw is next, last winning it all in 2013. It was 6 years after the Tigers' first title, and this year, 2019, is, yep, you guessed it, 6 years since that last one, in case you're going for a little bit of rhythm. The NCAC winners get at-large selection Loris in pursuit of the program's first tournament win. More national pedigree with two-time national champion Hope using up an at-large bid after falling in the first ever double overtime MIAA championship game. Try and survive that one, but may have motivated Hope entering this NCAA tournament. Wheaton also relied on an at-large berth to secure the program's 13th NCAA tournament berth. Both those schools travel to Wartburg, the American Rivers champ, which starts tournament play by hosting Upper Midwest champion Bethany Lutheran. Dave, your thoughts?
We indicated in the men's, we thought Amherst and Oshkosh were going to be the hosts on the women's side. They are. Again, odd-numbered years means the women have priority in the opening weekend should two teams from either gender have that opportunity. Amherst and Oshkosh on the men would have hosted, except their women are, so that's why we see that. Pomona Pitzer, an unknown, again from the SCIAC. You see the committee moving them all the way here to the central part of the country, not surprisingly. They're going to have a tough test, though, in Oshkosh. I think that's probably a fair battle. Oshkosh, one of the better teams in the country. You know, DePauw's got a lot of experience, but they're not unbeatable. I think they're a team that you should watch out for because they're well coached under Kristen Huffman. But Loris has also played well this year, and playing against the Tigers, I don't think is as fearsome as it used to be. Loris could pull a good upset here. Hope and Wheaton, this is a tough battle. Hope is a team, as you mentioned, who is nearly in on the AQ. They play in one of the better arenas in Division III themselves. Trine got them, and they got them in that double overtime game, but Hope is a darn good basketball team, and Wheaton's going to have a test with them. But again, as we mentioned earlier, Wheaton has battled with Illinois Wesleyan this season and in the CCIW with their schedule as well. That is a very tough first-round matchup. Then you got Wartburg. They, in the last 5 years, have done nothing but test themselves. They run a tournament at around Christmas time, and it's almost unexpected to not see top 10 teams there. If you don't see top 10 teams there, something went wrong. Wartburg will test themselves. They are good. They have proven themselves. They've had some magical runs in the tournament in recent years. They are a good team. And then Bethany Lutheran, welcome to the NCAA tournament for the first time ever. They stopped Wisconsin Superior's 54-game in-conference winning streak. Bethany Lutheran making their first dance ever. Fun to see them in. They got a battle, though, with Wartburg.
All right, 1/4 of the bracket remains as we slide on down. And DeSales is hosted on the top line here. Back after missing out a year ago, stingy defense led the Bulldogs to their 7th MAC Freedom Championship. Entering the weekend, DeSales was the only team in the country holding opponents below 30% shooting on the season. Morgan Bermelin leads the offense and the nation in assists, and she will lead the offense against ODAC winner Shenandoah in the first round. John Carroll makes a 3rd NCAA tournament appearance in via the OAC, while another at-large berth is handed out here to Middlebury, who showed enough resolve in the NESCAC this year to grab up a spot. MIT's new MAC title means back-to-back trips to the tournament, squaring off against St. Joseph's of Maine with an impressive record featuring just 1 loss. Ithaca is the host here at the bottom. The Liberty League champs did so in dramatic fashion, besting RIT in overtime this past weekend. Megan Pickle had to sink a late 3 to force overtime. Then Annie Giannone hit a layup with 3 seconds left to clinch that championship. NEAC champ Suny Poly is the opponent in the first round. You got some teams that went down to the wire just to get their spot in the tournament here, Dave.
Shenandoah was the 8th seed in the ODAC. They pulled off quite a few upsets to get into the tournament. They popped a few bubbles along the way, but they are going to take on a DeSales squad who has been a juggernaut this season and has proven themselves. And it's going to be at DeSales, which is literally, it's bigger than a high school gym. Most high school gyms, don't take to get me wrong, but it reminds me of a high school gym. That place can get loud. The fans are faithful. It's going to be a tough place to play for Shenandoah. But Shenandoah, again, is on a miracle run here. And why not have it continue, right? Middlebury getting in is another red alert to bubble fans. It shows that the committee went in a different direction than maybe some expected or could figure out, to be blunt. Middlebury in is another bubble burst elsewhere. John Carroll in. That's a fascinating matchup in a game we don't traditionally see in women's basketball. Looking forward to that one. Of course, being at DeSales, nice little collection of teams there. MIT taking on St. Joseph. St. Joseph's lone loss, the last game of the regular season in the conference title against, well, a really good team in Emmanuel. St. Joseph's, though, did not have a lot of great criteria. They're in thanks to their win-loss percentage. They're a team that I think has a lot of what-ifs. People see the 27-1 and go, well, they must be good. But then you look at your other resume and go, well, who have they played? Well, now they have a battle here to prove themselves, not only against MIT, but should they win, they probably take on Ithaca or Suny Poly. Ithaca, they're a team that needs to prove themselves. I feel like we expect sometimes to see Ithaca make a run and they don't, and then sometimes when we're not looking, they look pretty good. I think they got a chance at home to make a point, but it's not going to be easy. And Suny Poly's familiar with them. That's not going to be a surprising game. Suny Poly, though, trying to prove that the NEAC maybe is better than people give it credit.
What better way to prove yourself than a national championship run?
Absolutely.
All right, final 8 now as we lead off. Speaking of SUNY schools, how about the SUNYAC champ? That was New Paltz this year, just the 3rd NCAA tournament for the Hawks, but expectations are high after that championship run this past weekend. Extended the win streak to 19 games entering the NCAA tournament. Rachel Simon leads a potent 3-point attack, ranking top 5 in the country in made threes per game. Rutgers Newark snatched a bid from the field after an impressive trip to the NJAC title, getting them into the NCAA tournament. Hartwick won the Empire 8, getting a first-round date with GNAC winner Emmanuel, who you just heard Dave allude to a minute ago. A long and nervous wait now comes to an end for Smith, garnering an at-large selection for just the program's 2nd tournament berth. Skyline Conference champ Merchant Marine is a first-round matchup here for Smith. That game will be hosted by Bowdoin, last year's national runner-up, which came so close to winning a NESCAC title this past weekend. 3rd best scoring team in the country, outscores opponents by more than any other. But the 2-time national runner-ups have been defined a little bit by close calls on the opposite end. Is this the year that they finally get it done? Hunter won the Cuniac to earn the right to play Bowdoin first. And there you have all 64 teams that have now been unveiled. There's celebration, there's jubilation, and there is some sadness as well, Dave, as we look at these final 8 teams.
Yeah, this bracket has just revealed to a few teams that they are not into the tournament. We'll start at the top. New Paltz, certainly a strong team. Took the mantle from Geneseo officially by winning the regular season and the conference tournament this time around. They are a better team than I think people realize. Rutgers Newark, kind of like Shenandoah, making a run in the NJAC. The NJAC not as strong this season. Just happened to be one of those years where it wasn't as strong. Only one team was going to come out. Rutgers Newark, a good representative from them. Hartwick, He's going to get overshadowed a little bit here by Emmanuel. Emmanuel, coached by Andy Yasinoff. He is the all-time winningest coach now in Division III. He eclipsed that mark earlier this season. I'll jokingly say he's closing on a couple thousand victories, but it's obviously not that many. But he has been a stalwart and very consistent in Division III. He always has a good team. They're the ones that knocked off St. Joseph's, as we mentioned. Hartwick is going to have a battle there. That game down in Newport, too, means some interesting travel arrangements for some of those teams, especially Emmanuel. Smith pops a bubble somewhere. Some of us didn't think Smith would make it. It really depends on where everybody gets regionally ranked, and I think that's the key everybody has to remember. Where everybody gets regionally ranked is where everybody ends up getting in. Smith getting in, they had some nice parts of their resume, popped some bubbles in some other regions, including a team like Marymount. Merchant Marine's the automatic bid there. I think that's an interesting matchup because I think Smith, I've said this a few times today, needs to prove themselves. Merchant Marine has nothing to lose. Outstanding season. They could easily knock off Smith here and continue that run. Bowdoin, you mentioned it earlier, they've been on top of the rankings for much of the season. At one point in our rankings, they were tied with Thomas More when Thomas More got done with their 22-game stretch to start the season. But they got the number one pick because they had more first-place votes. They are a very good team. They got a great place to play a basketball game. The fans love them. They're going to be a tough team to get out. But, as you said, they've been the other team in the NESCAC for so many years. It's been Amherst Tufts, oh, Bowdoin, Amherst Tufts, oh, Bowdoin. Now Bowdoin's got a chance in the lower right-hand corner to prove to people they're good. And, by the way, the committee's also said, hey, the NESCAC, there are two teams we think are the best four in the country. They're going to take on Hunter. Nothing against Hunter, but that's going to be a tough game for Hunter to try and get past Bowdoin in Maine.
Yeah. All right, Dave. All 64 teams now, and as you look at it, you see the respect that we've kind of seen for some of these teams, how it plays out. We've talked about the fact that the last 5 national champions have all been undefeated when it comes down. There's only one team that can do that this year, but it sort of feels as if this might be a tournament for the first time in half a decade where we could see something, I'm not going to say haywire, but it almost feels like in the way this is put together, we could see some surprises on our way to Salem.
Yeah, I think that's a fair representation. Again, we're going to Salem for the first time in women's history. They'll play at Roanoke College at the Kreger Center. It's a beautiful location for a game. But I do feel we have some favorites. We got ones you can start penciling in. But at the same time, you're right. I think some teams are a little bit more vulnerable, or there's some matchups there that could make it a little bit more interesting that we may not see the usual suspects, as it were. However, the committee's done at least split the NESCACs away from each other. So, Amherst, Tufts and Bowdoin get to the championship weekend, the closest they'll face off is a semifinal. They've also done that with some other teams, the Thomas Moores and the St. Thomases and the like. While there's also some other tough matchups. Again, Thomas More is going to have to potentially get past trying to continue their run. So you're right. I think while we see some that look like they can be penciled in or somewhat automatic, there are also some other matchups that can absolutely make things go sideways a little bit. And that's what makes this fun, to be sure. Women's basketball has been top dominated for a long time. It's been getting deeper. This might be a year for someone or a couple teams to maybe make a run and shake things up.
All right, our work here for the bracket unveil is done. I have a funny feeling your work is just getting started, Dave, with this championship run coming up. Hey, Dave, thanks so much for the day today. Always a lot of fun. Enjoy all the games.
Thank you, Will. Always enjoyed chatting with you. Enjoy the tournament yourself.
All right, with all 64 teams now unveiled, it also allows us to bring in the chair of the Division III Women's Basketball Selection Committee, Karen Harvey, who's also the head coach at Montclair State University. Hi, Karen. How are you?
Hey, Will. How are you?
I cannot imagine how tiring this process has to be for you, not just with the field and trying to figure everything out with this, but trying to coach your team through the end of the season. Walk me through what the last week has been like for you.
Yeah, it's a little bit of it's a little tiring. A lot of multitasking.
I want to put your coach's hat on for a second as you look at trying to put together a bracket as well. You obviously have so many peers and friends that are in it.
Right.
Probably your area about as well as anybody possibly could, but you're taking a lot of that information that you're getting from around the country as well. How does being a coach help you in the process of putting together the bracket?
Yeah, I think it does really help. You especially know the teams in your own region and a couple other regions in your area. But I think, really being a part of this national committee has helped me learn, so much about the teams across the country and get an inside look into some of their challenges and things that are important to them. And I think you kind of put that all together and I'm able to use that all of us on the national committee are able to use that when we're looking at selections and especially bracketing.
What particular challenges do you guys face when you're on all those conference calls? You're obviously discussing things throughout the course of the season, but then it obviously revs up a lot the last couple of days to get to that final bracket that we just had today. What are the particular challenges that you guys have had to try and overcome to get to this final 64?
I actually, it was really smooth this year. We have a veteran national committee, and I thought our RACs did a phenomenal job this year. We had a lot of really hardworking people. So, we didn't have a ton of challenges getting through this. I think everyone did their part and pulled their own weight, and that makes for a phenomenal experience and really takes a lot of pressure off of me as a chair and
Yeah, and we know the logistics that present such a challenge in getting the actual bracket going and figuring it all out, whether it's the travel, what those restrictions might be on particular teams, not wanting to have teams face each other, especially if there's a lot of conference sort of rivalries that are there. As this sport has evolved, as this bracketing process has evolved over the last couple of years, how has it freed you to be able to put teams in particular spots, not only aid with travel, but also aid with the competitive balance of the bracket?
Yeah, and I think that's a really important, one of the goals that we had as a committee was to try to come up with a national bracket as much as we possibly could within the constraints that we have. And I think that some of those guidelines have loosened up. I think we did a really great job with the first round matchups. We were able to fly a couple teams, and that really made a huge difference when we did the bracketing. There's always a couple areas of the country that are a little tricky. But I think, in one of those areas, we especially did a really nice job. And, I think the NCAA has loosened up some of those guidelines and given us a little bit more freedom. And that makes for a more national bracket and a more competitive field and a better experience for the student athletes.
Well, Division III sports in Salem, Virginia kind of go hand in hand. We cannot wait to whittle this thing down and get to it. Karen, get some rest. We got some basketball to watch. I know it's been a long stretch for you. Thanks so much for your time, and congratulations on assembling 64 of the best teams in the country.
Thanks so much, and thanks for having me, Will.
All right, so there you have it. The entire tournament field is set. Again, first and second round action begins coming up this weekend. Sectionals the following weekend, and then we will whittle the whole thing down to the semifinals coming up on March the 15th. The championship played on March the 16th. You can follow along with all of the action here on NCAA.com throughout the entire process. Thank you so much for joining us today on NCAA.com. For Dave McHugh and Karen Harvey, I'm Will Haskett. Congratulations and best of luck to all the student athletes competing in this year's championship.
Big shots. Teamwork. This trophy is not given. It must be earned. The 2019 NCAA Division III Women's Basketball Championship, March 15th and 16th at the Krager Center in Salem.
Bounces right back with a triple. Great job here. And that'll do it!
Visit ncaa.com/tickets and get your tickets today.